What's going on, hustlers? Today we're going to be discussing how to read a DLA solicitation if you are a startup with limited resources. So oftentimes there's a lot of pitfalls that people are afraid of, or there's a lot of government jargon that people don't understand. Or sometimes companies will win their first contract and then they'll come to me and then they'll be like, oh, can you help me fix this? And they've made some mistakes that are kind of just like beyond repair for their first one. There's a couple thresholds that they cross that I'm just like, all right, I really can't help you at this point. So that's going to be the topic of today's video. I'm going to address the elephant in the room. If you're wondering why I got this hat on and these sunglasses and I've got the guns out, it's because for those of you guys who don't know, I'm an endurance runner. So I'm about to go do a 12-mile long run, and I'm preparing for the second race of my Budapest Marathon race prep, which I'm running with my mom. So I'm going to go run this race in Key Biscayne, April 7th, which is a half marathon. And then sometime in late July or early August, depending on when I finish my flight training and I become a certified flight instructor, I'm going to head to Australia to go run a full there. And then in October, I'm going to go run the Budapest Marathon. And the reason they're all over the place is because my goal is to run 7 on 7 continents. So I'll have 3 done by the end of this year. And then in December, I will be running a 100-mile ultra marathon. So the Daytona 100. So you run from Daytona to Jacksonville. So super, super excited about that. But without further ado, now you guys know why I got on this super, super sick running outfit. Let's get into it. So this is an RFQ. And you can find these on Dibs once you click on the solicitations, which are the hyperlinks. I'm going to move this over here so that way you guys can see better. So RFQ, request for quotation. So DLA's requesting us as firms to submit a quote to them via Dibs, their user interface. So that's what that means. So this is kind of confusing, like this little patch right here. So just keep in mind that the box that's checked corresponds with the writing or the text to the right of it. So if this box was checked, it would correspond with this text, meaning this RFQ is a small business set aside. But this box is checked, so it corresponds with this text, meaning that it's not a small business set aside. So as we come down here, we've got request number. So request number is synonymous with solicitation. They're interchangeable. Then number 2, we've got date issued. So this is when the solicitation was published. Then number 3, we've got requisition/purchase request number. So purchase request number and request number are 2 different things. Regular request number, just request by itself, is solicitation. Purchase request number is the PR number that is unique to that solicitation. Then we come over here, and then you can see deliver by date. So 168 days at date of order. Then you've got number 7 or box 7. So delivery FOB destination. So here you can see it says other. So if it's not FOB destination, then it has to be the opposite, which is FOB origin. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Box 5, we can see here, it says issued by DLA Troop Support. So there's a whole bunch of subdivisions of DLA. So there's Troop Support, Land and Maritime, Aviation, and Energy. And then outside of that, there's DLA disposition and then DLA distribution. So we can see here, this is issued by DLA Troop Support. And then within those subdivisions of DLA, they have their own division. So it's broken down even further. So we can see here, Construction and Equipment, Lightning 2 Division. Here's the address, 700 Robbins Avenue, Philly. The cool thing I like about DLA solicitations is you've got the buyer's name, then you've got their phone number, and then you've also got their email. So you will always get the buyer's name in the email, but you might not always get the phone number. This is a good example of the phone number, and you also get their fax if you still use the fax stuff. A couple things I want to address. So here it says page 1 of 23. So I've seen some solicitations with as little as 17 pages. I've seen some solicitations with as many as like 42 solicitations or pages. Ooh, I said solicitations. I got to catch myself. So this has to do with buy maybe a candidate for an automated award. So automated award is pretty much when an DLA's algorithm or DIBS algorithm evaluates your bid and then awards it to you based on a myriad of different factors like past performance, your Spurs score, your your kind of bid with exception, bid without exception, who you're getting the material from. So those are some of the things considered when it's done by an algorithm. It does say first article test requirements are not candidates for automated awards. So that's one of the things we'll talk about later on in the video. Here we've got North American Industry Classification System. So this tells us what NAICS code is the material in question. And then here, Defense Federal Acquisition Regulation Standards, DFARS 252.225-7001, Buy American and Balance of Payments Programs applies to all quotes above the micro purchase threshold. I want to say micro purchases are $10,000 and less. I believe it's $10,000 and less. If somebody really wants to know, if you drop a comment, I'll fact check it and I'll get that approved for you. I just got a lot going on in my brain. I flew earlier today, had a briefing, had some client emails, so my brain is kind of cooked. Destination inspection required. So Federal Acquisition Regulation 52.246-1 applies. This just means that the government is going to do the inspection once they receive it at their facility. They're not going to come to you and do the inspection, which would be an origin inspection, which is something that we want to avoid if we're a new company and we're a startup, because origin inspections are conducted by DCMA, which is Defense Contract Management Agency, and DCMA is independent of DLA. So if DCMA comes and they're like, your quality assurance processes aren't good, you don't have enough standard operating procedures, they will ground your shipment to DLA and be like, listen, I don't care, it's not going until I say you're in compliance with those things. So we want to avoid origin inspections. We want destination inspections in the beginning as startups. Due to the volatility of demands, frequent quantity changes on open purchase requests, offers are highly encouraged to submit quantity ranges when quoting. So basically, this would be in like the price breaks section when you're submitting on dibs. Not necessarily. I believe this would be in the price breaks section. So this means, like, if you're submitting something and let's say it's 100 boxes of gloves, right? And 100 boxes of gloves is $10. 101 boxes of gloves then becomes $8. Then 101 to 200 is $8, and 205 to 300 is $7.50 or whatever. This just talks about Apex Accelerators Procurement Technical Assistance Program. It used to be PTAC. Now it's just called Apex Accelerator. If you anticipate quoting on a solicitation after the closing date, please submit a DIBS quote with a bid type of no bid and place an anticipated quote date or the reason you are not willing to quote. This pretty much is just kind of saying, like, okay, if you are going to bid on something, but you just can't get to it right now, it serves as a placeholder. And then this pretty much will signal to the contracting officer, okay, if this person's, a small business and a hub zone business, and we need to meet our set aside requirements and they submitted a bid on it, we're not going to be blowing them up, asking them why the hell, they can't update their quote or something like that. So that's what that means. Caution notice. So you want to make sure you're complying with the Barry Amendment, Buy American Act, and other domestic material restrictions. Now, Buy American Act, there's a couple of loopholes, but that's some stuff that we talk about in our bootcamp. That's some more advanced stuff. Buy American Act typically means that the material either has to be assembled in the U.S., the material has to be made by a U.S. company on U.S. soil, or the actual like let's say you're making bearings, right? Like the metal of the bearings has to be sourced from the U.S. So those are like three of the different kind of criteria that can be used to comply with the Buy American Act. There's a couple loopholes on how to beat it, but that's some more advanced level stuff. Then we come down here, DoD class deviation 2023-Oscar001. So this has to do with small business joint venture offers must submit the representation required in paragraph yada yada yada. So this means if you're a small business and you're a JV with a SDVOSB, a woman-owned, or a hub zone or something like that, then you're going to have to provide documentation when they ask for it, stating that you do comply with that, or you are working with a company that meets the criteria to be considered one of those small businesses. Procurement history. So I always say procurement history is like deer tracks, and winning your first contract is like hunting down a deer, and the procurement history tells you what's going on with that animal. So a couple of things to consider for procurement history, a couple guidelines. This is what you'll see with normal procurement history. The example that we have here is not a super normal piece of procurement history. This actually is like, this has some abnormalities, but procurement history, typically the more DLA buys of something, the cheaper it is over time. In terms of like quantity, bigger quantity means lower price. That's pretty standard. You buy 24 rolls of toilet paper at $2. That's the price. You buy 12 rolls of toilet paper, then they're $3. The more you buy something, the cheaper it gets. Pretty standard. DLA reasonably expects a 5% increase in the price of material year over year, and that could be for a myriad of factors, including inflation, cost of raw materials, overhead, and supply chain issues. So DLA reasonably expects at least a 5% increase in the material. And let's see, what else? What else? Usually, that year over year increase is like a change. Like, let's say 2021, you sell something for $100. They're not going to be mad at you if you offer them something in 2022 for $105. Now, one of the things I do want to notate is if you come down here and you look at this example, I know normally quantity and price have an inverse relationship, but when DLA buys something from a company multiple times within a year, they reasonably expect that company is going to adhere to that price of the material. So it's not written that you have to do that, but it's just kind of like an unwritten rule that I've learned over the years of doing business with DLA. If they pay, like in this instance, $3.32 for 190 units in March of 2019, when they come back and buy it in May 22nd of the same year, they're going to reasonably expect you to charge them the same price. If there is a difference in price, then you are going to have to provide them with an informal cost breakdown, which usually they'll request. So procurement history, you've got the cage code, so you can see the company who won it. You can look up the cage, see if they're a small business or whatever, if they're women-owned, hubs-owned, see what you're competing against. Then you've got the quantity that they bought, the unit cost, so what they paid per unit, so $3.30. And then you got the last time that they bought the material. And then here it tells you surplus material, whether or not it was surplus or brand new. So in this instance, it says no. And then when you see a solicitation like this, and then it has like the long numbers, that could be a BPA or an IDIQ. Actually, I want to say it's an IDIQ. And when you see the PAPA 0001, that usually means purchase order 001 placed against that IDIQ. So yeah, this pretty much tells you procurement history just establishes precedent. Like, what is DLA expecting to provide? What does the market look like for the product that you're attempting to sell? So that's procurement history. Then we come down here, purchase request number, repeating, and then NSN number. So that's right there. Then you've got your item description, dust collector unit, bag filter. Same thing. When you look on the approved source page for this, you see dust collector unit as the nomenclature. This item is identified as a commercial off-the-shelf item. For simplified acquisitions, the revision of the master in effect on the solicitation issue date, in effect, RFP issue date applies unless this is saying if there's any material revisions, then you got to go with the most recent one. So oftentimes you'll see different parts have different revisions. Let's say something from Sikorsky or Bell Helicopter or Boeing or whatever. There'll be a revision that means that you have to comply and provide the most recent revision. And then Romeo Papa 001 DLA packaging requirements for procurement. That means there are packaging requirements. Romeo Quebec 0111, removal of government identification from non-accepted supplies. I believe this is a new one actually. Removal of government identification from non-accepted supplies. Yeah, this is actually new. If somebody comments down below and reminds me, I will look up and give you guys the exact piece of information that this corresponds to. Then you've got Romeo Delta 003, so cover defense information, aka CDI. So CDI is the equivalent of CUI, which is controlled unclassified information. The only difference is it's called CDI, defense information, because we're doing business with the Department of Defense. Now, CDI or CUI is really just information that can be deemed as sensitive, and then if it's in the wrong hands, it could potentially adversely affect the national security of the United States. So when you're dealing with Department of Defense stuff, it's typically export control documents. Now, export control documents are, the way I like to define them, just like a brief overview, like a kind of general way I like to think about it is, if this piece of information or information about this product or material gets in the hands of, America's enemies, China or Russia, would it adversely affect national security? If the answer to that question is no, then it does not contain CDI. Now, DLA will also conduct their own audit of the contract / solicitation to see if CDI information applies. But they will ask you now, like, hey, do you know off the top of your head, or do you know prior to us evaluating this if CDI applies? If it does apply, Then you have to take some steps in terms of quality assurance and standard operating procedures, which we discuss in depth in our boot camp. CDI is this whole other topic. I could talk about it for like 2 hours. I literally spent an hour and a half just doing an overview of it in our last boot camp. But you can read about it in the National Archives, and like quick Google searches will show you all you need to know. So that's just like a brief overview. But because it says this item is identified as a commercial off-the-shelf item, more often than not, CDI does not apply to COTS, commercial off-the-shelf items. So you're good. 3M company, that's the company name. This is the approved source. So you'll typically find the approved source for the material in a solicitation right above the contract line item number. Then you've got their cage code. Then you've got their part number. So 20452, that's the part number that 3M has, or this cage code has for this material. Here you've got your CLIN 001. So CLIN stands for contract line item number. Then you got your purchase request, or PR, which stands for purchase request. Then you got PRLI, purchase request line item. And then you've got UI, which means unit of issue. And then you've got the quantity. So 1,734, the unit of issue is each. So they want 1,734 each individual units of these bags. Then you've got your delivery in days, so 168 days. So keep in mind, DLA buys based on forecasts, not on immediate need. They buy based on what they think they're going to need in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. So this is like tentative, right? Like you can put a lead time that's longer than this or shorter than this. It doesn't make or break your bid. And then if they need you to expedite, they'll just ask you after you win the contract to expedite. Delivery FOB. So FOB stands for freight on board. Whenever you see delivery FOB origin, that means DLA is paying for the shipping. If you see delivery FOB destination, that means you're paying for the shipping. Then you've got quantity variance, plus 0%, minus 0%. This usually is applicable. I mean, it's applicable in any contract, but I tell my clients, you want to only mess with that if you're doing a large shipment, like 10,000 units or more. So the quantity variance means plus or minus 5%. Let's say you're doing 10,000 units. That's like what, 50 units would be like 5% of that. So that would just tell DLA, hey, listen, there's so many units while I'm packaging, these 10,000, I might lose 5% or something might happen. You might get 5% more or 5% less. So you just do that to cover your butt. And then here you've got inspection point destination and acceptance point destination. So these are synonymous. So inspection point destination means that they're going to be inspecting it once they receive it. If you see something that says inspection point origin, leave it alone, because that means DCMA is going to come and do the inspection, which you don't want to do, especially if you're a startup. You probably don't have your standard operating procedures in place yet, because they're going to be different for every company and every kind of product market. Then you've got packaging data, QUP001. So that means quantity unit per package. So you see 001, the unit of issue is each. That means they want one of each in the bags, or typically it's going to be bags because this is ASTM. So in each bag or each unit container, you can use little boxes. If the unit of issue is pair, let's say you're selling like sterile gloves or something like that, that means they're going to want one pair in each of the quantity unit packages. Then you got, will be packaged in accordance with ASTM D3951, which is commercial packaging. You can look up the ASTM D3951 requirements. This is just a solicitation video, not a packaging video. If you have questions on packaging, you can reach out and book a call with us, or you can hop on our website and you can sign up either for our next live bootcamp or get the recorded version of our course if you need some help with packaging. But whenever you see ASTM D3951, that's commercial packaging. That just means package the material in a way that's not hazardous or injurious to the item. And then all DLA master list of technical and quality requirements take precedence over D3951. So that just means if the material has something specific that needs to be done to it in terms of its packaging to safely ship the material and not injure it, that means it takes precedent over ASTM D3951. Then you got mark and label, all packaging and packing in accordance with Mail Standard 129. So that's just, the marking standard for all kinds of labels that you're going to be sending to DLA. So if you use VSM, which is the free, they make free labels, they're in compliance with Mail Standard 129. I like to use MailPack. I teach all my students how to package on MailPack. I just think it's better. It gives more information. But MailPack, I think, is like $300, but it's like a one-time fee or something like that. And if you use MailPack, it's also in compliance with Mail Standard 129. Palletization shall be in accordance with Romeo Papa 001. Palletization is only required if the material is more than 600 pounds. So if the shipment's more than 600 pounds, you need to palletize it. If you're a startup and you have limited resources, I would not advise you to do anything that has to do with palletization. Parcel post address. That's not too important. Freight shipping address. This is what we want to look at. DLA Distribution, Cherry Point, Phantom Road, Building 147, Bay Alpha, Cherry Point, North Carolina. So this is where you're going to be shipping it. So sometimes these are the same, your parcel post address and your free shipping address, but they can be different. So realistically, this is like the most important one that you want to be focusing on. So that's kind of like a brief overview of how to read solicitations. And then I'm just going to show you guys like a couple searches that you want to make in terms of like stuff in solicitations that you want to avoid. So FAT, if you command F and it doesn't show up as FAT in the document, then you're good. That's a first article test. Essentially, the government's asking for a prototype, which logistically and financially it impacts how the contract is going to go. You don't want to deal with stuff as first article test if you're a startup and you don't have any relationships with manufacturers. If you do, then you can have them make a prototype and they'll know what a first article test is and you can ship it to DLA and then go through that process. ISO, so this says isotope, but this has to do with selling radioactive materials. So if you're selling COTS, more often than not, it's not radioactive material, so you don't have to worry about this. But ISO, if it shows up as ISO 9001 or AS 9000, that's a quality assurance standard. And that's like a couple $1,000s to get. And if you see that in the contract, you just want to move on from it because that means that you have to be ISO certified to bid on the contract, or else if you win it and you're not ISO, then they'll cancel it. JCP, Joint Certification Program. So that has to do with if you're dealing with material that may contain export control documents or is being manufactured in like Canada or something. That's a certification that you have to get, and that's around like $500. Last I checked, it could have gone up, could have gone down. Whew. So yeah, you want to avoid anything. This is JCP. Then sampling. So sampling is essentially the manufacturer, vendor, distributor makes a prototype, and then they do a test report of the prototype, or they take a sample of the material that they just made, do a test on it, and then they make a report. So sampling reports. So if you see sampling, you want to avoid it because DLA might ask for sampling reports, and if you don't have a relationship with a vendor or manufacturer, they are going to be hesitant to give it to you. Lot testing. So same exact thing as sampling. It's just they test a lot, or they test like a batch from the lot of material that they made, and then they have lot testing reports. So that's a brief overview of how to read a solicitation if you are a startup with limited resources. I hope this video is informative. Please like, comment, subscribe. I think at the time this video is up, we'll be at 500 subscribers, but please share this video. We're trying to get to 1,000. I'm going to be speaking at the Parts Base Expo in Miami March 8th, which is in like 2 weeks. So if you're going to be there, come say hi. And then I'm going to be speaking on a podcast, which I'm not going to name drop the person yet, but she's very big in the government contracting space. So keep your eye out for that in March. And yeah, I hope this was informative. I hope you use this to make yourself some money. Please like, comment, subscribe, follow me on Instagram, follow me on TikTok. TikTok is more so for, personal development stuff and, building discipline. Instagram is more so if you guys want to, get in touch with me or you get to know me on a personal level. And then YouTube is where I'm going to be doing all of my long form content. So with that being said, I hope you guys get after it. Enjoy the rest of your day, hustlers.